it's recording?
Oh, I'm just doing it now. Yep.
Oh.
Good. Okay, so welcome everyone to our yearly training. It's lovely to see you. I'm being all official now. Thank you so much for taking this time out, and thank you for all that you do the whole year. And this is being recorded that we can pass on to the people that aren't here. Hopefully a few more will join. So I'm just going to put the agenda up first. I'll share my screen. And it is slightly changed, actually. Victoria's going to lead off, and she's going to give us a little introduction and talk about what's happening with MPA and all the things that we've got ahead. Instead of the self-care for volunteers, we're going to do the debriefing training first and then have a bit of a discussion. Then we'll do the self-care for volunteers, a little bit of a discussion again, and Brooke is doing the self-care for volunteers. It's a recorded one. And then we're going to finish off with the resolving conflict module and have a discussion. And then we're just going to talk about a few bits and pieces to do with volunteer agreements, which we will probably do next year, and just a few sort of business things, and then we'll conclude. So, Victoria, thank you for coming, and we look forward to what you've got to say.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Nita. And it's so lovely to be here with you all. It seems a long time since I've been on one of these meetings, so I'm really delighted to be here to really give you all a big thank you. I mean, it's such a, oh gosh, memorable is probably an understatement for the last couple of years, 18 months certainly. Memorable time in history, and look, it's been a tough time as well, and I'm really cognizant of the impact that the COVID pandemic and the double whammy of dealing with a melanoma diagnosis and trying to support our patients and carers with a diagnosis has been tough, you know, really tough on everybody. So from the honestly, I am so grateful you do the work that you put into supporting your groups and supporting the individuals that you give the one-on-one connection and support to. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep. Yes, it is dropping in and out a little bit.
I thought it might be a little bit. Yeah. Let me know if there's a problem. Yeah, so I just really wanted, honestly, just to say thank you. I know everyone's worked so hard, and you know, everyone's had their own personal, nobody's not been affected, you know, in terms of the impact that it's had on everybody, and then trying to squeeze in the volunteering role and helping. Look, you guys are heroes to us. Like, just the work you do is just incredible. So thank you very much. That's my number one message. I thought it might be great to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to. I mean, most of you are across our emails and our social media and such like, but it would be good to do a bit of a recap on the year that was, and maybe do a little bit of a forward, you know, what's going to happen hopefully in 2022. So thought that would be a good little way for us to get started tonight. And look, it's been a great year for MPA. I know it's been a challenging year for everybody, but we've had a positive year. We've looked at how you find a silver lining amidst the challenges, and the team, everybody from the staff team, the volunteers, the board, everybody's, I think, really worked so hard to make sure the time that we had, you know, the inability to travel, the inability to run services like we normally would, to make sure that had minimal impact on patients and families. Look, I think that's not been easy. I think, and certainly listening to feedback from Nita, I know that you guys have been missing your face-to-face contact with your groups, and that's been really tough. But I think we've made the most of what's been a really challenging situation through our Zoom connections and the telephone calls that you've made to patients and carers, etc. So, you know, we've done the best we could given the circumstances, and I think people have really valued that connection, and our Zoom groups have gone pretty well. I think they did really well in the first 6 to 12 months, and, you know, probably waned a little bit over most recent times as people are kind of desperate to get back to some face-to-face interaction. But fingers crossed and very hopeful that 2022 means we can swing back into into a new way of working, whether that's a hybrid way of working where we do some things face to face and we do some things digitally. I think that's something that Nita and the team are thinking about, and we want to talk, more broadly with you all about what's the best way for us to continue to deliver the services, and how do we reconnect with people and make sure we're doing things that really make a difference and that people want in 2022. I think whatever we do, it's going to be different. So there's going to be a lot of thinking we need to do around the COVID safety plans, and how we, I know Nita's been chatting already to you, how we get people to check in, and what will happen if people aren't vaccinated, and all of these challenging questions that we're going to have to work through. So I just ask for your patience while we work through some of that. And we're obviously looking at other groups like the Cancer Council. We're part of a big group nationally that are looking at some of these challenges as well, and how we get the right policies and procedures in place to make sure everyone's safe. That's the number one priority. So I think, from an MPA perspective, I think everyone's risen to the challenge. We've done the very best we can. We've taken some of the time we've had when we haven't been traveling around as much to really focus in on some of the governance issues for MPA. So the board in particular have reviewed their strategy, the strategic plan. We've reviewed our constitution in the last 12 months as well. We've adopted a new approach to membership to make sure we're really clear on who all our different levels of members are across the organisation, which has been really good. We've done a recruitment drive for new board directors, and we've actually got 3 new board directors that have joined the group, which is lovely, and brings some fresh faces to the group. We've brought on one individual who is a melanoma patient and an entrepreneur and businessman onto the board, Klaus Bartosch. He's also been doing some very successful fundraising for cancer research and has had both leukemia and melanoma. So he's on our board and is a fabulous addition. We have Ruth Power, who joins us, and she's a medical scientist with a background in oncology and pharmaceuticals, and she's come on board. And then we've also got a wonderful Professor Michael Kimlin, who's a professor of epidemiology and particular interest in skin cancer. So it's been great to get some new people on our board of directors during the year. We've also really worked hard on our consumer advisory group, and that's been up and running now for about 12 months. And Karen isn't on here today, but Karen Van Gorp co-chairs that with Peter Goulet, who many of you will know. And that group's been going incredibly well. We've just recruited another new person onto that, which we'll be announcing shortly. And the group have been doing some great work developing consumer engagement strategy with me to present to the board, which is accepted and is now available on our website, and looking at really important piece of work we're doing at the moment in partnership with Melanoma Institute Australia, which is to develop an advocacy report called State of the Nation. And this, many of you will know about because we've surveyed you, and a number of you were involved in our stakeholder Zoom sessions we held around this. So we've been collecting lots of data and working with a group called Insight Economics based in Melbourne. That report is almost at final stages. So we're pretty close to having a final draft for approval, and we're planning to launch it in the first parliamentary sitting week of 2022, which is February. Depending on what happens with the election, because there is a chance that an federal election could be called at any point between now and May. So we've got all of our fingers crossed that we'll be able to get the report launched and some good media and get the health minister involved in that. And we're hoping to get some patients and families to Canberra, depending on whether it's safe to do so. So there's lots of planning in the background around that, as what will happen and whether we can actually get a big event happening in Canberra, or whether we have to do it hybrid, where it's partly live, partly digital. So we're just working through that at the moment with the team at Melanoma Institute, but that's likely to be in February. And we've made sure we've worked really, really hard to make sure that consumers' views and input is right at the heart of that report. So thank you for all your help in, you know, getting the surveys out. We had over 1,000 patients and family members answer the survey, which is a brilliant result and really gives us some rich data, which will be teased out in the report. It's a huge report. At this point, it's 200 pages. So it's a good bit of nighttime reading when I get it out to you all. might take you a bit of time to get through it, but there's a good executive summary, and it really focuses in on some of the issues that came out from our patients and their families about what are the big issues and challenges that people want to see the government and other groups like ours fix, I guess, in the melanoma space. So that's very exciting. So our partnership with Melanoma Institute is going really well. I think most of you know that through that partnership, we actually have a wonderful telehealth nurse, Brooke, who many of you will have met, Brooke Kelly. That's funded through our partnership with Melanoma Institute Australia. Brooke's been operational now for about 12 months and really building up a portfolio of patients and carers that she's supporting. And we're planning for that to continue. In fact, we'd love to build that service up because demand is actually very, very strong for that service. And Brooke's actually incredibly busy at the moment. So she would have loved to have been here tonight, but she has another commitment this evening. But she's you're going to hear from her hopefully a little bit later on in a pre-recorded session about caring for you guys to make sure that you look after yourselves in what's a pretty tough job. In caring for others. So yeah, so hopefully you have the chance to meet Brooke and hopefully refer any of your patients and carers that might need that extra level of support into her for that bit of extra help and navigation and support. In terms of other things with Melanoma Institute, I just wanted to flag for next year, the melanoma marches are going to be back face-to-face in real life, rather than virtual. I'm saying that because that's what Matthew Brown's told me. He's adamant that's what's going to happen. That, you know, we want to get them back face to face. So one of our partnership arrangements there is that we try to get out to as many of the marches as we can with an MPA stand where we put all of our brochures and information and such like on there. So that is one thing that we might be reaching out to, depending on where you live and whether there's a walk in your area in 2022. But we will be looking for either to ask you or maybe to connect in with people in your network in the local area to see if we can get some volunteers to help us to man the stands, because I think it's really important at those marches that people find out about Melanoma Patients Australia and our services and know about your support groups and how to get connected in. So that's a little piece of work. I think we'll probably be chatting to you early in the new year about what's happening with that and where we'd like to have our banners and stands and resources available. So that's exciting, and it would be great to get everybody back face to face, because I think people are craving to do something like that with the marches and get the awareness out there and reconnect. In terms of other things that we've been up to this year, our wellness program, which many of you will have seen us promoting, is going really, really well. That was a grant that we actually got from MSD, who are one of the pharmaceutical groups that produce the Keytruda treatment. Their global USA group approached us and asked whether we'd be interested in putting together a support program for patients and families in Australia during the pandemic, and that's where we got the funding to do our wellness program. So we've had a wonderful suite of webinars this year, which many of you may have been connected into, and that we've just done the final one of that last week. And the exciting thing is we're developing a portal on our website, which is going to be called a wellness hub, and we're going to put all of those webinars, help sheets, which we are currently working on. We've got a copywriter working with us to produce a range of new resources, which we're hoping will help patients and families wherever they live, and particularly trying to get the message out into regional and rural areas about the support and information about staying well and doing the best you can with a diagnosis of melanoma in the middle of the pandemic. And those resources, I think, will be kind of long-term resources which we can keep updating over time and will be really helpful. So that's been a great project, and we haven't actually got our portal up and running yet because we're actually building a new MPA website at the moment, which is under construction, well underway with its construction, which is very exciting. And I'm sort of saying this very tentatively, and Jodie's not here to look at me with dagger eyes, and I'm hoping we'll get it launched before the end of the year, but there's a chance it could be January. Obviously, it just depends on where things land with our designers and the delays with the pandemic. But we're really hoping, if it's not by the end of December, that it will be in January that we'll launch our fab new website, which is going to be a lot user-friendly, a lot easier to read and navigate, and we're going to have new sections on there like our wellness hub. We're also working to develop a section for healthcare professionals, which is, you know, specifically where doctors, dermatologists, skin GPs, etc., can go in and just quickly download help sheets if they've got a patient in clinic that needs some information to take away. So we're working on all of that quietly in the background, which you won't have seen yet, but our plan is early in the new year those resources will be launched and developed, which is great. During the year, we've been really busy with our work internationally as well. We're still involved heavily with the Global Coalition of Patient Advocacy. I just spent a couple of very late nights. Usually those events are in different parts of the world, but we're trying to get everybody from all around the world together at the same time is a real challenge. And us Aussies always pull the short straw of getting the graveyard shift, I'm calling it. Usually meet from like 11 p.m. till 2 a.m. in the morning. So we've had a couple of those great meetings, but it's wonderful because there's about 40 other patient advocacy groups, so very similar to MPA from all around the world that meet, share ideas and work together, and the challenges that one another face. And we've done some great work, I think, in the last 12 months on awareness raising campaigns. So things like our full moon lookup campaign, which many of you would have seen us doing on social media, that's come out from the Global Coalition. And we've got some more resources around self skin check that have been developed, and our missing melanoma campaign that was all based around some concepts that the Global Coalition group had worked up together. So we're still working really well, and that partnership internationally is good and connects us in, you know, to different people from around the world, which is very exciting. Our next big push with that will be May next year, when it's World Melanoma Awareness Month in May. So we'll have some more exciting campaign activity around that time. What else do I need to tell you? I think that just about sums it up. I think we've had a great year. It's been challenging. Our closed Facebook group now has hit staggering numbers. Some of you remember in the early days when we had 30 and 40 participants on there. We've got over 2,200 participants in that closed Facebook group now. And thanks to, we've got some moderators here. Ruby, thank you so much for all the hard work. I've got volunteer moderators that help Nita and support team in making sure that's a safe place and a positive place for our patients and families. And it's an incredible resource. I think many of you beyond that to agree, if there's something you need to know about melanoma, it's the place to go. That's for sure. And our carer group, which was launched in the last 12 months as well, we're now up to 134 carers in that group. So we've got it's a small group, but we're growing that incrementally. So if you do have any carers that you think would benefit from getting involved in that group, we want to grow that group over time and make sure that carers don't feel left out in any of our support activities. I think I'll leave it at that, but I'm very, very happy to take any questions that you might have about MPA and our future directions.
I think the only thing that I was thinking you might not have mentioned, Victoria, is the Touched by Melanoma campaign that's just begun. Yeah, that's a really good point, Nita. So yes, it's National Skin Cancer Action Week just started, so it's a very timely chance for us to connect with one another. So that's normally led by the Cancer Council and the Australasian College of Dermatologists. So they've got a campaign that launched yesterday, I think it was,
which will run for a week. But we decided this year that we wanted to do something a little bit different. So we are running a campaign called Touched by Melanoma, which is a storytelling campaign. So we've got quite a lot of patients and carers who've put their hand up and said they're willing to share their story and information, and that's going to be shared across the coming month, which is a full month cycle of our full moon campaign, and sharing stories from people with stage 1, 0, in situ, right through to stage 4, people with different stories. We've got a story coming about from someone who's got the fear of the sun since they've been diagnosed. We've got a story from someone who's had relationship challenges since they've been diagnosed, and just trying to really share insightful information and give people some inspiration and hope. But one of the things that we'd love to for you guys, if you're on social media, and look, appreciate not everybody is, it is an interactive campaign, and we are going to be putting some things up there asking for people to talk about their own experience and share some of those resources with your networks and your social media. So if you are able to, and you are on either Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, if you could follow the campaign, if there's things there that resonate with you, or you can share with your networks, we'd love you to get involved and behind that, and encourage others to do the same. And if you would like to share some personal insights on our open pages, it just may help another patient find us, because one of the biggest challenges we've got is many people say, I wish I'd found out about MPA sooner in my diagnosis. So we really were hoping to try and spread the word really widely and connect in more people that perhaps don't know about MPA, and through people sharing their own personal stories. So that's underway now. And so if you do have access to any of those social media activities, we'd love you to get behind it and involved. I've said to Nita, we need a bunch of social media advocates that are happy to press the like and share and try and help get the word out a bit more widely. So it's going to be quite an interactive campaign. So I'm quite excited about that.
Any other questions, anyone? Thank you for joining us, Leanne and Ruby. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you, Nita. It's good to see you.
Yes. Any other questions about anything that Victoria's talked about, or? No? Okay.
Oh, I've got off lightly there, Nita.
Yes, you really have. Yes. I didn't even think up a hard one.
but look, if anyone wants to have a chat to me at any time, please feel free to reach out if you've got any questions after today's session. Very happy to chat to you or answer via email, whatever works, and open for your feedback and ideas, because it's you guys are at the front line doing the hard yards, and getting the intel from you on what we need to do and what we could be doing better and different is really important. So I appreciate any feedback that you've got on our ideas that can improve the work that we're doing here at MPA and help make your lives easier.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Victoria. That's great.
Thanks. You've got a great session tonight, so I really don't want to get in the way of that. So have a fantastic evening, and thank you so much for all the work that you do, and glad you were able to get, and some of you were able to get onto the conference yesterday, because that was a really great educational opportunity. And I think it's just having these opportunities to build our knowledge and share are really important.
Great. Thank you very much, Victoria.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. And I just wanted to publicly thank Leanne for her wonderful presentation at the last wellness forum, or whatever we call it, video. Yeah, you did such a great job. I don't know who saw it, but Leanne presented a really great presentation of her story. It was really inspiring. So thank you for that. Yeah, I know it's quite taxing giving that personal input, but it was just so great.
Thank you. It was really my pleasure to do it, and although it's quite emotional when you sit and reflect on your journey, it's certainly it was worthwhile doing, and hopefully it helps somebody else along the track. So
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. So we're now going to go, we're actually going to go back and fairly well follow our program after all, a little bit different probably. So we're going to start with the self-care, and this is a module which Brooke, we've recorded of Brooke, and yeah, we're just going to bring that up now so that we can listen to what she has to say.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brooke Kelly, and I am the melanoma telehealth nurse, as most of you will be aware. I have the pleasure of presenting to you all this afternoon the importance on self-care. Okay, so what is self-care? Most of you will have heard the terminology before. And as volunteers, it is important that we do practice self-care. We're going to talk as well today about the wellness wheel, compassion, fatigue and burnout, which is a big one for anyone working in particular the health field, managing our boundaries and practicing self-care. So a little bit more about self-care. So the Black Dog Institute refers to self-care being the activities and practices that we deliberately choose to engage in on a regular basis to maintain and enhance our health and well-being. If you don't look after yourself, you won't be able to help others or yourself. Self-care helps prevent stress and anxiety. Self-care makes you more effective, and volunteering can be a part of your self-care. So the non-physical ways to practice self-care, there's so many of them, and it is an individual thing. So some of the things we can do is asking for help, spending time alone when we need it, putting yourself first, and that's always a difficult one, I find. Asking for what you really need, setting boundaries, staying at home, saying no when you feel up to not doing certain events. It's really important that we can choose to identify when we don't want to participate in something. Forgiving yourself and taking a step back. So all of these are really important things that we can all do by practicing our self-care and making sure we're looking after ourselves. So volunteering and self-care. So Reach Out identified 5 ways to take care of yourself when donating your time. Number 1, organise your time. Know your own limits. Once again, it's okay to say no. Have some fun and treat yourself. So now we're going to talk today about the wellness wheel, and this encompasses many areas of our lives. So we have our relationships, atmosphere and fun, work and school, our physical health, spirit, body, mind, and finances. So this is all used to measure happiness in all aspects of our life. What we can do is we can rate each of our satisfaction in all these areas between a scale of 1 and 10. Setting 1 to 3 goals in an area that the score lowers than others, and having some SMART goals for our future. So having some specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So what we can do in relation to this is it's probably good practice to all sit down and measure our own happiness and have a look at the wellness wheel for ourselves and rate each of these areas. There may be an area that you can identify that needs further work, and you can start to make some small steps and goals to work towards what that may be. So this is just one of our resources that you can all use. So the spokes in the wheel. So a bit more detail in relation to this. Number 1 is our mind, our mental wellness. Am I intellectually stimulated by my own life, or am I bored? Do I have sufficient creative outlets, for example? Number 2, body, our physical wellness. Am I getting enough sleep at the moment? Do I have an established exercise routine? These things are so important, and sometimes as busy health clinicians, we can neglect to do these things for ourselves. Heart, our emotion wellness. Do I have ways to reduce stress in my life? Do I love myself, and am I unconditionally able to love others? Number 4, spirit, spiritual wellness. Do I have a strong sense of purpose in my life? Do I have regular meditation practice or create time for prayer or affirmations? Do I feel like I belong? This is always another area that we can always look back on and reflect and find if there's areas in our life that we want to improve. Finances, number 5, financial wellness. Am I able to live within my means? Am I able to create a budget and stick to it? Number 6, relationships and social wellness. Do I have strong support systems? And do I make time to get out and visit my friends and family? Once again, we can sometimes neglect to do these things when we're busy and when we're committed and giving back to others. So it's important that we also reevaluate these things in our lives. Number 7, work, school, occupational wellness. Am I satisfied with my current career or education path? Am I motivated to getting enough with my work in every day? Is this an area I want to improve on? They're good questions to ask yourself, and a good conversation to have with those you trust, as well as the people you work with, because it's important that you're on the right pathway and that you feel really happy and satisfied with what you're doing in your life. And number 8, atmosphere and fun, your environmental wellness. Do I get to have fun? Do I get to go outside often? Is my house safe? Does it nourish me? Do I keep my areas clean and organised? Having a really happy space can also really internalise how we're feeling and can set the limits as to what we want to take on during the day. So all of these things are really important, and we can all reflect and we can all go through these step by step to find out really how we're going in each of these domains of our life. So most importantly, compassion, fatigue, and burnout, which is something we've all heard before. So now we'll go into what this really means. Okay, so managing compassion fatigue, how do we do that? So I guess you're all in this because you are giving people and you like helping others. So naturally you are a giving person. So it's important that we conserve our own energy for ourselves and for our own family as well when we're the giving type of personality. So managing this, how do we do this? Number 1, get to know what your triggers are. That's really important. Number 2, create transitions from volunteering to home. So what we mean there is when you finish your shift for the day, it's good practice to close your computer and turn your work phone off and then move on to your own activities for the rest of the day. So you have that nice balance between work and home life. Number 3, maintain strong boundaries between volunteering and home, really making sure that you're not working outside of your hours and making sure that you're enjoying your outside of hours activities and pleasurable activities, because that is so important that the people who are volunteering with us, you yourselves, have that lovely balance. Remind yourself, number 4, and others, that you're only human. We can only do so much in one day, and sometimes there will be times where we might feel we want to be harder on ourselves, or we should have done certain things, or maybe we might reflect on something we would have liked to have done differently. Always talk to your manager or someone you trust in relation to something like that, and keep reminding yourself that you are only human. Number 5, remember what you can and you can't control. That's a big one as well, because there sometimes are certain things that are out of our control, even though as giving people, we may want to be able to help every aspect of that person that we're supporting on the other line, or whether it be in our own personal lives. We have to know our own limits and remember that we can't control everything. So we have to learn to let go sometimes. And number 6, connecting to spirituality, and that will obviously be individual for any of you. So whatever that is, and that brings you that satisfaction in your life, we encourage you to keep practicing those things. And number 7, really important, make room for fun and having humor in your day, because I think that really makes a day enjoyable for you and for others. So number 5, managing boundaries. This is something that everybody will learn to do over the years, and it is really important that we all find a way to do this. So managing boundaries between your experience and those seeking support. Your melanoma story can inform support, but it is not the focus. What you know about patients in and outside support areas, take care at social events, and do not carry over, of course. So basically what we are referring to here is, what stays within your workspace remains in that room, and we don't encourage those people to have conversations outside of work practices about phone calls or private information that may have been shared between one person to another. Of course, there are limits there though. If you have had a difficult conversation with a patient or somebody on the phone and you do need to debrief, or you do need to escalate that, of course, that is when you would pick up the phone and speak to somebody you trust, or someone you feel comfortable with, or your manager next in line, and just have that conversation about the phone consult and what was said and how you're feeling. We would always encourage people to feel comfortable about speaking up if they have something on their mind or something that was quite upsetting. And of course, we would always encourage you to escalate when you feel you've reached that scope of practice and you can't give any further information or advice. We're here to support. Okay, so our roles of our volunteer supporters, obviously you're all very good at knowing when to refer patients. As if, of course, you're uncertain at any time, you can always pick up the phone and speak to your direct line manager, or reach out to any other MPA staff members. We're always here to offer help and assistance where need be, and knowing your limitations as we just discussed and your strengths. So really sticking to that scope of practice. So if you don't know the answer to something, it's okay to say to somebody, look, I'll get back to you on that point. I don't have the answer for that today. That will be most appropriate. So managing boundaries between time and place in the group, calls outside and meeting outside, watching that creep, because that's really important, and not in your own home. So what we mean in relation to that is, once again, really leaving that work with you at the end of the day in that space that you're working from, whether that's your bedroom or your office space, making sure that what has been said remains confidential and you don't take that into your personal life or let it creep in into other relationships. So it's important that you have your debriefing opportunities in relation to that, and managing any feelings or emotions you may have, and really allowing yourself to have that break once you finish your shift for the day, and letting go. And a helping relationship and a friendship. So boundaries can be blurred sometimes within that friendships that may be formed, or if you've spoken to somebody on the phone that you have a personal connection with, it can sometimes be a little bit tricky to just know where your boundaries lie. But we would just encourage you to treat everybody the same, and stick within the script that you've been taught and your scope of practice. So number 6, practicing self-care. And as we touched on at the start, this is obviously individual for everybody. So what one thing works for one of you may not work for another person, and that's okay. So for example, for me, it may be going and listening to some music on Spotify. That might be my way of practicing self-care. But for the person sitting next to me at the lineup at the restaurant, their self-care may be going for a 20-kilometre run. So it will be completely individual for each and every one of you, and that is okay. So there's no set thing we would be encouraging you to do. It's just what you feel comfortable and happy in doing, and that gives you that pleasure. So physical, so just those things that bring you that physical enjoyment. It may be going for walks, it may be going for a run, it can be whatever you would want it to be, basically. Making sure you get your adequate sleep per night. And if that's something that's concerning you, we would encourage you to speak to your healthcare provider about that, about recommendations and some strategies that might help with sleep if that's been an issue. Adequate nutrition, so making sure that you're having your breaks and having your adequate meals and lots of water in between as well. It's really important. And breathing exercises can be really useful for any sort of stress and relaxation that may be required during the day for your personal or work situations. And social, so as we touched on a bit earlier in the slides, just having quality time with family and friends, that's really important. So you're connecting and having that really lovely time with people that are really important to you, and debriefing with colleagues. Once again, we would really encourage that. Always happy for people to pick up the phone, of course, if they would ever like to talk to me or anyone at the MPA team. We're all here together in this for one reason, and we all care about everybody. So would we really encourage you to feel comfortable to always have that debriefing when you need to. And just, again, that inner self. So, you know, whatever that may be, once again, it might be keeping a journal or writing your thoughts down on a piece of paper. Having time in nature can be really peaceful and important for people to ground themselves, and connecting with spirituality, which is obviously individual once again. Okay, so just recapping. So what is self-care, which I think we've covered this fairly well today, but obviously it's something that you can learn to do if you haven't done it before in the past. And it's always nice just to start slowly and set small goals for yourself if this is something new you want to give a go. So maintaining and enhancing health and well-being is basically what the meaning of self-care is, and it is individual. So volunteering and self-care, organise your time, know your limits. It's okay to say no. So if you've been bombarded with things lately and you might feel really tired, maybe your friend might pick up the phone and say, hey, can we come around and drop the kids off for you this afternoon, or can we come catch up and have dinner? You might actually not want to do that. So it's okay to say, no, look, actually, I'm really tired today, or I've had a busy week. Could we catch up next week? You'll actually feel so much better when you do allow yourself to say no and put yourself first. So having some fun and treating yourself, it's so important. So, you know, having that hot bath, or maybe it might be putting a mud mask on, or it might be cutting some flowers. So having some fun and treating yourself, I think that's so important when you're in a giving role such as this. And the wellness wheel. So if you get a chance to refer to the wellness wheel and just assess how you're going in all those domains of life, other areas you want to prioritize on or work on, set some new goals for yourself. It's a really good thing to do. And just being aware of compassion, fatigue and burnout, particularly in this line of work, and forgiving personalities such as yourselves. It's very common for anyone working in health, as you most be aware, and when you're in those giving type areas. So just being really aware of when you're starting to notice some signs and symptoms that could be an issue, please raise that with your manager or someone you trust and have a conversation about that. And then we can put some things in place to reduce that burden to yourself and take some time to slow down a little bit. So I think, you know, just important to keep engaging with your colleagues and friends and staff in relation to that, and managing your boundaries, as we touched on earlier. And that is for all your life, really. It's not just for work purposes, but in every area aspect of your life. Just setting boundaries with people in general can be really helpful and can really help you to find and assert yourself in your own life as time goes on. And practicing self-care. So once again, that is individual, and everybody will find their own set tasks and activities that work for them. So starting to incorporate that into your life if you can, and even it might just be by starting with one practice once a week, and then just gradually building. So obviously we have pre-recorded today's session, but you can send through any questions to me at my email address, which is brooke@melanomapatients.org.au. And I would encourage you to do that if there's something that's still pending on your mind or something that you wanted further information about. And I want to thank you for your time today and wish you all the best. Thank you.
And we'll just stop sharing the screen for a minute and we'll just have a quick discussion before we go on to our next one, which is the managing conflict. So any comments or anything to add or take away or whatever? You're all very quiet. Are you just very tired?
Nita, I'd like to say that Wellness Wheel is a fantastic exercise to do. Although you look at it and you think, oh, that's pretty simple, I get the concept, but when you actually sit down and look at those areas of your life, you might uncover some ones that you aren't really paying enough attention to, or possibly neglecting there. So it is a worthwhile exercise. I encourage everyone to maybe over that Christmas break, if you've got some downtime, to pause and reflect on that Wellness Wheel.
Yeah, I think generally it's good for everyone, isn't it? And you can end up with a very wonky circle. You can realize you're quite unbalanced actually in your life. So, and I think it's something you need to keep doing as well, don't you? Like you might get it right and be pretty well, and then something else happens and it all goes out of whack. So a really helpful thing. Yeah. Anyone else? No, you're all happy and looking after yourself, which is good. That's good. Okay, well, we'll move on now to the conflict management, which is probably a little bit more complicated and harder to get our head around at times, but a really important one to really go, to look at, I think, because it is something that happens on a regular basis in our life, isn't it? So we really want to make sure that we do the very best we can to manage conflict as well as possible. So we'll move on. Next slide. Okay, so today we're going to look at what we can do to resolve conflict. First of all, what conflict is. Secondly, where situations are where conflict might arise, particularly in our volunteering area. How we deal with conflict, skills to manage conflict and preventing conflict as well. So next slide. Okay, so first of all, I haven't got it here. This is to see whether you're really listening and see whether you've got some input. What would you define as conflict? Has anyone got anything they'd like to give a definition? What is conflict?
A difference of opinion to start with.
Yeah, great. Anyone else? No one's got any conflict in their life. How amazing. Okay.
I was just going to say differences between, what one treatment, someone may be offered this treatment and then someone might have a totally different opinion of what that treatment is, and, there's conflict there because you're trying to instill what your beliefs are or whatever on that other person as well, and they may not want to know about it.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. That's good. Yep. Well, I've had some actively happening in my home this week within my big family. It can be a serious disagreement or argument, and it's typically ongoing, to be incompatible, at a variance with something or someone else, a clash. So conflict you know, is a normal part of life. It is invariably going to happen because we are all individuals and we're all differences. We all come with our differences. We all come from a different family background, the way we were brought up, beliefs, values, and it can be very, very destructive. It can really tear people and organisations apart. So the good thing is that it can be a positive thing. And I know that is something I've learned in my life, that as hard as conflict is, it really does help us if we can embrace it and manage it well to learn more about ourselves and other people. Next slide. So the causes of conflict, as Christine was saying, many are varied, but conflict over values or beliefs, that's a big one. Then when we're frustrated or stressed and grief, that is often a time that conflicts will come, when our emotional being is quite disrupted. Hostility just between people, just personality clash. What happens, sort of conflict, not understanding one another, or else that probably at the right at the end range of bullying, harassment and discrimination. So they're all the sort of things that can cause conflict. Next. Can conflict be a big thing, a good thing? And like I said before, it really can be an opportunity for growth. If we can manage and resolve conflict well, it really can be a wonderful way of building trust. And it can help us to have a better understanding of new ideas and each other. And it can also teach us a lot about ourselves. So I think the more vulnerable you can be in being able to look at yourself and to be able to understand and listen to someone else and where they're coming from, it really can grow your ability to have a whole bigger picture of situations and people and ideas, and yeah, and it can be a really, really good thing, but it is difficult and it takes effort. Next. Okay, so situations where conflict might arise, and I think this is where Christine's one comes in, between two co-facilitators, and I know you haven't all got a co-facilitator at the moment, so maybe I'm talking to Brian and Ingrid, and I'm sure you never have conflict. Always. But you can have differing opinions on how to run the group. That could definitely happen. Between group members, differing opinions on areas, discussion like treatment options, emotional responses, dietary needs. There can be so many very different individual opinions. Between a peer supporter and a client, just one-on-one, there can be areas of disagreement on different issues that are being discussed. And then Facebook posts, Ruby knows about this as I do. There can be very different opinions expressed, and there can be lack of sensitivity or empathy that can lead to quite a conflict situation. Next. How do I deal with conflict? So I think one of the keys, and which we often don't do well because we put it off and we procrastinate, is to deal with it as soon as possible. And I think that's what I've learned with my years of living, is that it is something you don't really want to approach and deal with. But I think the sooner you do, when you feel like there is some conflict, is to deal with it quickly and not leave it and let it fester and get bigger. Take a shared approach, which means that you actually are willing not just to get your opinion across, but that you're willing to hear the other person and to work together with them. And then recognize and listen to the other person's concerns. And then last one, refer to MPA staff if necessary. So just like Brooke was saying, sometimes there can be conflicts which just don't seem to be able to be resolved. And you may need to have someone, one of us, to help with that situation. And hopefully that doesn't happen very often, but yeah, it can happen. Next. So what sort of skills do we need to manage conflict? First of all, we have to manage our emotion, because that can really change the way that you handle a situation. Next, you have to listen. And I think when you're very passionate about something, I know this is me, I can forget to hear the other person. I'm so busy trying to give my opinion. Then to frame it, to try and get exactly what the conflict is. And then the confrontation, which sometimes is dealing with a difference. Next. Managing emotion first. So first of all, be clear about how you're feeling and really be open about your feelings, but just be really careful about how you describe them, making I statements instead of you. So personalize it to you, not sort of accusingly or to say you and say I instead of you. Keep in mind, it's difficult to listen when experiencing strong emotions. So I think the more angry or the more upset you get, the harder it is to hear what the other person's feeling and where they're at. And avoid judging, just share. And that can be really hard. Okay, next one. Okay, we've got a little video here to play, which is just giving some examples of listening.
May not play, Nita. No. We might have to move on. Can you hear me?
Okay, go on to the next one. It's not working.
No, sorry.
Sometimes you just have to enable it at the top because they're not sure if it's coming from a reliable source, Jody, and that can sort of stop the video playing. I know I've had that trouble. That's fine. So we'll look at this. What they were doing actually was giving a couple of examples of the way someone came in to talk about their problem and how her boss responded. And the first one responded without really hearing what she was saying, not really acknowledging what the concern was and identifying how it was upsetting the person. And then they redid it the better way, and it just came over and she got such a better response. So,
sorry, everyone.
No, not that one, Jody. We're still back on the other. Sorry, the last one. So first of all, focus on the speaker. So make sure that you're not just thinking what you're going to say and what's this person like. They might say, oh, I'm always, the person's late to work, say, for example, or late to come to a session or whatever, and they're wanting to talk to her about it. And she's in her mind thinking, oh gosh, here she comes. She's got more excuses. She's trying to explain away what's happened, and oh, I wish she'd just be on time. And this is the second time it's happened this week. So you can be so busy with your own speaking in your head that you're not actually listening to what the person is saying. And then the second one is show you're listening. And that can happen with your body language, just making affirmative sounds, being really open-ended with your clarifying questions, and paraphrasing and sort of saying back what they're saying to you. And then acknowledging the speaker's feelings, oh, you're really upset about this, aren't you? I can tell that this is really upsetting you. So instead of concentrating on the problem, seeing where this person's coming from, and then identify the speaker's values. So sort of see where they're coming from. Thank you. Next one. Okay, next one. So then we've got to really frame and work out what is actually happening. So we really have to start with a non-biased description of the conflict. So really try and get exactly what the conflict is. Then follow with an acknowledgement of the other person's view. So understanding what they're saying and really acknowledging that, and then acknowledging the other person's view and explaining your view. So, you know, if it's to do with the lateness and not being at a place on time, saying, look, I understand that you've got a child, you've got to drop off to childcare, and sometimes there's a lot of traffic and that makes you late and your child's a priority, but I guess I'm just trying to think of the other volunteers and I'm just wanting to make this work. And then suggest you both problem solve solutions to your shared problem. So then you'd say, so I really want to work this out. I know it's difficult with you, with your child, and how much this, you know, your child is a priority, but I'm also trying to work out how we can best work this so it's good for us both and it helps us both to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. So that's sort of the process of framing. Okay, next one. So confronting, and this is always the hardest part. So naming the issue first, and this has a little click to the next. Yeah, okay, so naming the issue. And so first of all, it's actually naming, I'd like to talk to you about. And then giving an example of the situation that you find difficult to tolerate. So when you did this, so actually sort of naming, you know, this particular thing, that's where I was struggling. And then describe your emotions about this issue. I felt, or I feel. So very much an I thing, not you were attacking me, but I felt something. And then the last one, explain what is at stake if the issue is not resolved. And then talking about, you know, I'm concerned that this will affect our relationship, or this will affect the running of our group. It's going to really change the whole feeling in our group if we don't work together to be able to work this out. Next. And then identifying how you may have contributed to the problem. I would like to resolve this with you. So not just making it the other person's problem, but going together with it. I would like to resolve this with you. How can we do this? Communicate your wish to resolve the issue collaboratively. I may have, and so, you know, talk about what I may have come over this way. So how about if we try to do it this way? So working together. Invite the other person to respond. I would like to understand what is going on for you. So get them to bring their understanding of where this conflict is so that you are able to understand where they're coming from. Next. Preventing conflict. Okay, a few things just to hopefully help prevent unnecessary conflict. As I said before, it definitely will happen because it is part of life, because we're all very different individuals in very different situations. But some of the things that can help us to prevent conflict are being really clear and concise and respectful with our communication, to set very clear expectations. And I guess that comes with, you know, when we're looking at Facebook, to have really clear guidelines, when we have our groups, to have clear group guidelines. So we already know the expectations. To be as positive as possible as much of the time as you can. And to embrace the conflict when it arises. Don't just try and push us aside and not deal with it. Okay, so just to recap, really, we've just talked about conflict, what causes conflict, the fact that it can be a good thing. And then we've looked at some of the situations where conflict might arise, and I'll get us to have a bit of a Q&A talk about that. How do we deal with conflict? And so we talked about, you know, trying to deal with it as much as possible and to take a shared approach recognize and listen to other people's concerns, and then get help from a staff member or someone else if it just gets a bit beyond what you feel you can deal with, which does happen. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think all of us have had situations like that. And then the skills to manage conflict, managing our emotions, and that's probably easier said than done. Listening, really listening, framing and really getting exactly what this conflict's about, and then confronting to try and work out a solution. And then just to prevent conflict, looking at having really clear and respectful communication, setting clear expectations, being positive, and embracing conflict when it arises. Okay, so we'll now go back and stop sharing the screen so we can have a bit of a chat about that, and maybe just to talk about where have you struggled in this area, or where do you think we need to work on some areas, or has it never happened? Whatever you would like to talk about.
Can you come to our strata meetings and go through all of that? We could really do with it. our body call.
Who was talking about? Oh, this Lynn.
Yeah.
Oh, Lynn. Yes, I can just imagine.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, dear, would give you a heart attack just about, hey?
Just about. It's not good.
Yes,
Conflict on steroids. It goes on. Yeah.
Because you're actually living together and not just volunteering together or in a support group together.
We've got two buildings as well. So,
oh gosh.
And they have to come together. The two committees have to come together. So anyway, off track.
Gosh.
No. I could think about was while you were doing all that was that.
Yeah. But it is a really important thing, isn't it? Dealing with conflict. And it's probably taken me most of my life to feel like I've got much, much better with it. So practice makes perfect, I think. And I've got 6 children and 16 grandchildren, and you can just imagine the dynamics that happen in our family. And we're a very lovely family, even though I say so myself, but there will always be conflicts of one sort or another. And even though we try to manage it well, emotions get involved. You know, there's situations that happen that are out of your control, and everyone's different and got a different priority. So it can be really tricky. Yeah. Sorry.
It's Trish. I did have one person that she was very harsh work, and my understanding she'd been to MPA and then she'd come to me, and in the end, or it might have been Skin Cancer Tasmania, and then me, and then we passed her on because, you know, even if you said, look, I understand, you know, you're very angry, and, you know, I can hear you say, don't start that psycho babble on me.
Yes. And I think the thing is that we can do our very best to manage conflict, but if the other person doesn't want to cooperate, it's very difficult, you know. So it's not like you can always resolve everything. Hopefully among all of us as volunteers, we can, so we can work together. That's the main thing. You may find some people's personalities slightly easier to cope with than others. But yeah, it is true. And I think, Ruby, you'd be one to say this, that sometimes on Facebook, we have some tricky situations, don't we? Which, you know I've had reported things from similar people over and over at times. So even though I've tried desperately to put all those things in place and manage it, that other person has to also take some responsibility. Have you got anything to say, Ruby, about that?
Yeah, I think people are yeah, that's a common thing of people, the same people reporting the same issues over and over. And we kind of have to show a bit of that we understand where they're coming from, but the post has this, you know, the post is not against the guidelines and they haven't done anything wrong. So we have to explain as politely as we can to the complainers that you know, we can leave the post. But yeah, and also in the group, I think with people writing behind the keyboard, obviously, people say things they wouldn't necessarily say in real life. And you can really misinterpret people's tone as well. So there's a lot of challenges with the online space.
You don't have that body language, do you, that you can, you know, you can see, oh no, she's not threatening, she's not, you know what I mean? That
yeah. Some people can seem really blunt or rude, or and they're not, they're just
That's what emojis are for.
Yeah, emojis are for, yes, I know, yes. And I think we've got to remember that this is where we have a lot of very stressed people and people dealing with grief, people dealing with a lot of anxiety. So it's like I talked about with emotions are often at their height in this sort of area of work. So we have to be very, you know, graceful, really. We've got to have a lot of grace. We've got to have a lot of patience. But that doesn't mean you put up with things which are unacceptable, but we've got to try and manage it well without inciting further stress and frustration. Yeah.
But there's something about just are never happy. It doesn't matter what you say to them either. They're just that personality. So sometimes it's easier to walk away from those people and just leave it with them thinking they're right. And then that's because otherwise it just never ends.
No,
I had a
you're
patient
right.
that he just didn't like what his body was doing. He didn't like his melanomas. And it's like, well, what do you want me to say? Like, of course you don't like them, but you need to go and you need to have this done and that done. And but I just don't want it, Christine. I just don't want this happening to me. And I said, well, neither do the other 3,000 people on the Facebook page, but it is, you know.
Yes,
so
yes.
It wouldn't have mattered what I said to this guy. No. He just didn't want it.
No. And that's what I'm saying, that there are some situations where you do everything right and all the right strategies, but if that other person isn't going to engage, you just have to, you know, let it go. Have a boundary and let it go. Yeah, so anything else?
Mind if I ask a question?
No.
People tend to find that there's conflict more online, or, you know, on the Facebook group rather than the face-to-face meetings. And I know it's been a while since people have
absolutely.
But yeah, for some reason, I mean, I'm not really an online person, but I prefer to meet people face-to-face, and I don't see any reason like people would be coming together for support, you know. So I don't understand why they would be having conflict. I mean, I imagine there's the occasional conflict, but yeah, face-to-face groups, you're meeting for that purpose, aren't you? To support each other. So do we actually have examples of conflict within the face-to-face meetings?
I've been running them since 2006, and I can honestly say there's probably been twice in that whole time that there's been a little bit of conflict between a couple of patients, but nothing in comparison to what you see on Facebook. Because they don't just think they can say what they like. People do have that compassion, and they do, you know, keep a lid on, I guess, what they're, you know, instead of just blowing up as you can on Facebook because no one sees you do it. Whereas if you're face to face, people I think are a little more tender rather than just
a little bit more respectful.
Yes.
It's easier to see someone in front of you as a human and a person, rather than some people on the internet that aren't as human or real, you know.
Exactly. I think it's that body language. And also I think even though people are forming relationships on Facebook, it's much more engaging when you're in a room together, isn't it? I think you're forming much deeper, stronger, real relationships, and you're more aware of other people's feelings and needs. And yeah.
People wish I had that button. People have to go through their own stages and arrive where they need to be, and sometimes they're just not ready. So, you know, there's lots of stages of anger and grief and bargaining and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So, you know, they have to be ready and willing, and some people aren't. And I've only struck that one lady that, you know, she desperately wanted help, but she wanted to argue, and it didn't matter what you said. She'd start an argument. Like, even if you said, look, you know, I can hear that you're really angry, you should say, oh, don't start that psycho babble on me, because she wanted to fight. She wanted to lash out. She was just angry. And I just said to her in the end, like, you know, I don't think that I'm, you know, supporting you. I'm going to get you somebody else, which I did. And I don't think that she went well there, but it was too stressful. So I suppose you've got to know when to walk away.
Yes.
And you know how to do it gracefully, I suppose. So I put the blame back on me and said, look, I don't think I'm helping you. So
and I think recognizing that time and that boundary is really important, because otherwise we can battle and strive and struggle for a long time. So either you know, put the boundary in to stop what that line of whatever it is, or that talk on Facebook, or get someone else involved to be able to, that's at another level, to be able to perhaps come in and deal with that situation, because it's not healthy to have it go on and on. Yeah, so, okay, well, let's move on to our last module, which is a fairly short one. This one's debriefing. And let me just come here. Okay, you're seeing that?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so this is debriefing, and it's something I think we probably need to do a little bit more consistently. I know it's something that I don't actually do enough, I quite often would probably do it with Jody, for example, another staff member, but not, what would you say? It's not a thing that is regularly done, probably. And I think it is really, really important. So why is debriefing important? How do we debrief? Life buoys that can help us in this process, and debriefing prompts. So this is a quote: debriefing is really retelling stories, and it's a form of debriefing, an opportunity to ventilate our feelings, to spend time reflecting on the impact of the situation, and to help reduce the stress experienced. It also helps to activate effective coping skills. Retelling the experience while the details are fresh allows us to identify problems, and it teaches in a way that is distinct from textbook learning. Why is debriefing so important? Well, first of all, distressing conversations or difficult people can lead to feelings of irritation, inadequacy, distress, guilt, anger. A problem shared is a problem halved. And then listening to different perspectives, different ideas, different personalities, different recollections can help us process what's gone on. And it leads to increased confidence and self-awareness, enhances our knowledge of both group dynamics and group members or individuals, and helps with our self-care, as Brooke was saying before. And also important to avoid burnout or giving up, as well as becoming disillusioned, frustrated, or resentful. How do we do debrief? Well, I think debriefing really has to happen as soon as possible after a group or a conversation with someone. So this way it's fresh in our mind and the emotions are still there. And also to set aside as a strategy 5 to 10 minutes after each group to have a general chat about how it went. And I know, particularly because we haven't got co-facilitators in every group, this isn't easy to happen. And that's why we're so keen actually to have a co-facilitator in each group so that that is possible. The telephone support group, which we do with Cancer Council New South Wales, they do this as a matter of part of their routine. Every single time that I help facilitate one of those groups, we have a 5 to 10 minute time afterwards to talk about it and what happened and what were the general feeling of everyone, what we needed to follow up on. And it really is very useful. So the Life Buoys for you, to keep you afloat, your group co-facilitator, and that's why I think they're so important. Me or another volunteer that you know really well that might be great to talk over something with, a Cancer Council support person, someone you trust, a colleague, friend, or other group member maybe. You just have to be a bit careful about that if they are in your group. And then self-reflection is a really good thing as well. So what are the prompts? Well, with support groups, I think things like, was the number of people who attended as expected? And is there a reason why it was down or whatever? Did people seem to stay interested during the discussion? Did anything unexpected happen at the meeting? And how did the group respond to me or us as leaders? And then for both support groups and individuals as well, we can just ask the question, what went well or what didn't go well? What could we do differently next time? How do you feel after the meeting? Do you have concerns about a specific group member? And if so, what needs to happen next? What do you need to do, if anything, before the next meeting or before the next conversation? And what are you going to do now to take some time for yourself? So often I think it can be really good after a fairly full-on time, either one-on-one with someone on a conversation or from a Facebook comment sort of journey or a group time. You can really come off and feel quite flat or quite, you know, sort of stressed. And it can be really good to do something really relaxing just to take your mind off it completely. So we just looked at why debriefing is important, how to debrief, Life Buoys for you, and debriefing prompts. So let's just have a bit of a talk about that. How many of you would regularly debrief with someone about what you do in your volunteering role?
Yeah, Brian and me usually get together afterwards and debrief and
Right.
you know, just talk about how it went. We had earlier this year we had a lady who sort of took over the whole hour. And we let her go, you know, chat, because we felt she needed it. And no kidding, she passed away. What was it, Brian? A month later?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, it was was quite incredible. But, you know, the next meeting we were just so, how can you describe it, Brian? You know, we were just so happy that we let her, you know, as Brian said, she must have realised how bad she was. She never told us how bad she was, but she obviously needed to have that real chat. So we just let her go and go. Yeah, and yeah, we didn't regret it. We sort of thought, how do we do it if she does it again and again and again? But we just let it go. And
yeah. And that was really sensitive, because you could have thought this isn't appropriate in a group situation, but you thought, no, let's see what happens next time. And as it worked out, you made the right decision. So well done. Yeah. I think that's where co-facilitators, I really encourage those of you that haven't got one to really think, even over this holiday period, who could you engage? Who could you ask to start, you know, co-facilitating with you? Because I think it is very, really important. Anyone else? What do you do, Christine, after a heavy helpline call?
Oh, I'll call you. It depends what it is, but some of them do leave you feeling very, very down after the call, because it wouldn't matter what you do to them, you know that the people aren't going to get better, and you know their time isn't long and things like that. So naturally you do feel upset and sad for them and sad for their families. But if it's really bad, I just give you a call, or if it's at a meeting, there's always someone that hangs back after the meeting, and you know, you have a chat with another member of the people, depending on what it's about. Whatever.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. What about you, Ruby, with Facebook? Because I think that actually that's really important thing that we probably haven't really stressed for you doing your moderating for Facebook. I noticed that you and Debbie are communicating sometimes over certain things that you're concerned about, and you join in with me to get me to comment. And I think that's really important, but I think do you feel the need that you probably need sometimes to debrief about a sort of a flow of conversation?
Occasionally, yeah. I found it helpful that Debbie, when we've communicated, when we're unsure of what to sort of do or feel about certain posts, it's really useful to have that discussion, or that, you know, access to each other to go over it, and debrief. I guess the posts normally sort of flow by themselves, and you do get some resolution, and I just sort of, I don't know, I haven't really thought about it. It's part of the journey, I guess, that I'm going through myself.
Because I think you don't probably, even I realized I was doing a lot of debriefing with my husband. And I mean, he's a great person to debrief and with, but it's actually not the best thing, really, you know. I think we do have to think a bit more strategically about it in our volunteering roles, that we really do support each other and do have quite a routine with it, so we don't wear out, you know, like that self-care thing, so we don't burn out, we don't emotionally get overloaded, and that it doesn't get us down. And I know it has me sometimes, you know, even the conversations with Facebook, and I've found myself really sinking a bit, and probably because I didn't really talk about it and kind of voice it. And like we just talked about with debriefing, it helps you just to get it out, to frame it, and to sort of think, okay, I need to now let go of that, go and do something, go for a walk or do something. Don't just let it keep dwelling on you. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that you've mentioned your husband, I do that too all the time. And there's been some hard posts to read recently, and I'm like, Steve, can you read this? And
I know. And I mean, it can be wonderful to have someone right there, but I think we've also got to think, you know, of our relationship with our partner as well, and be very sensitive that we don't want to damage that by, being. So there's a balance, isn't there? Like, Anything else anyone wants to share about that? I think it's definitely something I'm going to give some thought about. I know we do it when we meet in our group. We talk about how we're going and what's happening, and with our volunteer support people that we have hopefully a monthly meeting, we try and do a bit of that. But I think, like it was saying, it's got to be straight away. I don't think we can just save it up for every month or whatever. I think we've got to do it a little bit better than that. So I'm feeling challenged about that anyway. Okay, so I want to finish soon. So I just want to get on to a few business things. First of all, we have been in the habit of re-signing volunteer agreements every year. Now, we're not going to do it at the moment because we're trying to get a whole lot of policies and procedures, which we haven't really had nailed down in MPA as an organisation. And once we've done that, and it's just in the process at the moment, and by the beginning of the year, February, when we next meet, I'm hoping that we will have those to be able to share with you, things like conflict management as an organisation, things like privacy and confidentiality, things like work health and safety, you know, just a whole lot of things. So we're very clear about what happens and what you do if a situation arises. So when I get that, we're going to actually put it all in a booklet as a volunteer booklet. And then when you sign the volunteer agreement, you're agreeing to all those different things that we're talking about. So I think that makes a lot more sense. And that should be available in February. I also have just about completed a resource document with all the different resource links for information, for hospitals, the different melanoma units around the country, the different oncologists, say the oncologist in Cairns, who we highly recommend, or someone in Newcastle, the different melanoma nurses at different hospitals that we can contact, just to, when people ask you questions, that you'll have an actual list there that you can go to easily and say, oh, you live in Darwin, look, this is what we've got that we know in Darwin. Or this is something we know about that would be helpful to you in Cairns. And then there's things like understanding your pathology report, that sometimes people are trying to read their report, the link to the latest guidelines that people might want to look up, just a few different documents like that, and links to different things. Cancer Council, different kind of care that Cancer Council, financial support, what people need in that regard and who we can suggest and what's available in that area. Psychologists, so a whole lot of different things. We're just about there, but we're just finishing it off. So I'll have that for you in February as well. The other thing is...
Are you going to have palliative care, in like a list of palliative care places as well in that in that list?
Yes, hopefully. I've forgotten who I've put in there now, but that we will definitely want to have that. You're right. Yeah, that's really important. And mental health contacts as well. Yes. So those sort of things are really important. So yeah, so that will all be hopefully included in that. And it won't be once it's done, it's finished. We want to make it a live one so we can change and add to it as well. So how that's going to work, we're still working on it, but yeah, hopefully that'll work out. So the other thing is the face-to-face meetings. So as you all know, it's been a very challenging couple of years and we're just coming out of this COVID thing, but it's still a little bit uncertain till every place in Australia gets to the same place and settles down with what's happening with what and where you can go and where you can't. I'm hoping by next February, when most of the groups will meet again, that we will have a clear path. And we've got our COVID safe plan and hopefully we'll be okay. There are some places that have to renegotiate where they meet because, for example, Cancer Council are now not going to allow groups in after hours. So we're looking at options. That's happening in Brisbane. I know that's happening in Townsville. Some of you, the venues you've been at, will still be okay as long as they've got a COVID safe plan and whatever. So hang in there. For
Nita, can I just say, I had a meeting with Cancer Council Victoria, the support group coordinator. There would have been about 30 people there covering all of the support groups in Victoria. Okay. And the documentation has come out that people who attend face-to-face meetings will, well, it'll be dictated by the venue that you go to, whether they'll accept vaccinated or non-vaccinated. But essentially it'll be, you'll need to be vaccinated. And then we were talking about having hybrid sessions. So face-to-face, but someone have a computer and, you know, the others face-to-face and then on Zoom or whatever. So it was quite interesting to speak to them, and everyone had their, you know, their say and whatnot, because people are concerned that those who aren't vaccinated, who need support, what do you do with those people? So that's why we were, there's likely to be a lot of the groups will be running two sorts of groups, face-to-face and virtual. So that's in Victoria.
Victoria, that's right. And I think at the moment, every state is slightly different. And I think in 3 months, it'll be different again. You know,
I don't think it'll be different in Victoria.
You don't think it will? Okay.
No way.
Okay.
No.
Well, I think we've got to wait and see, but I think it will be because, like, for example, the middle of December in New South Wales, there won't be any restriction with vaccinated or unvaccinated. Anyone can go to any venue.
I think,
so that's,
yeah, from Cancer Council's perspective, they're looking at the responsibility they have of supporting you as an official group. What is their responsibility towards cancer patients?
Yeah.
So that's one of the angles they're coming with. And I haven't heard that it will change down here.
Right,
that requirement to, you know, have a COVID certificate or whatever, a vaccination certificate.
Yeah. Anyway, that's in process, and we will wait, you know, till next year, and I'll give you really clear direction about what happens with that. But yeah, we'll look into that very closely. About getting together before Christmas. So not as a MPA kind of organised event.
Invite, Nita, and you don't know anything about it.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, you know, there are places that can safely do that in COVID safe places and are happy to do that. And, you know, I'm just, yeah. So you just have to do what fits with your situation. Yeah. So, but I know people are really dying to get together. I know that. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Only
No?
thing I can think of, are they thinking about a gala dinner at all next year?
I don't know, Christine, but what I do know is that one of the new board members has a lot of fundraising experience and has a lot of very interesting ideas, evidently.
Right.
So whether it's going to be gala dinner or whether it's going to be something else, there are lots of ideas flying around. So it's definitely a priority that we've got to do something to get more funding without strings attached, you know, without always having to be connected to grants. Yeah. So yeah, it's the gala dinner, that's great, but it takes a lot of manpower. You know what I mean? Like, it really does take a lot of effort. So I think exactly, you know all about it. So I think we're going to try and get as much as we can that's not too heavy on demanding on our volunteers, but we'll see how we go. Yeah, yeah. And I'm really hoping I'll be able to come and visit some of you as soon as I can. Like, hopefully that will be the case, because I'd love to catch up face to face. I've really, really missed that. And like Victoria said, we have got the marches going ahead, so there'll be more communication about that. And we'd really appreciate in different centres if you could have a few volunteers that might be able to help with that and just being able to promote MPA at those areas. And yeah, just thank you so much for all you've done and will continue to do, I hope, and for coming tonight. And this is recorded, so we'll send it. I will send it to everyone once we've got it sorted. Also, for those that weren't able to come to the conference, we will have access to all of those sessions till February, 3 months. And so you can click on and listen to whatever you like. But yeah, Mark Smithers and Georgina were particularly good in that forum. And Anne Gately was a great patient speaker as well. She did really well. So yeah, so I think you'll get some good things out of that. But there were actually quite a few. Did you get to hear some really good things, Alison?
Yeah, I did the 2 days. So
yes.
yeah, so it was probably about 4 or 5 sessions in a day. So I was a bit, I had a melanoma thing on Thursday. So by Sunday, I really was melanomaed out.
Yes, yes.
But it was really good. The topics were really pertinent. And so, I mean, I would encourage anyone when they get access to, I mean, I've got it because I had the full registration, but when you do get access to them, watch them, you know, they were really good.
Yeah, I found them excellent. Like, sometimes it was hard to choose which one to do because there were about 3 on at the same time, and you just had to choose one. So I'm quite keen to go back and look at some more. But yeah, they were very, very good, very educational, very practical. There were some scientific ones, of course, but yeah. So yeah, I think that is all. So if there's no more questions, thank you for coming. Thank you for taking your evening out. I know it's a big deal after a day, but really appreciate it. And I'll be in touch.
Thanks, Nita.
Thank you, Nita.
No worries.
Nita.
Yeah,
Bye,
thank you,
everyone.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Nita, can I
Bye-bye.